So I figured I would go through the process of setting up a Smith machine incline press, because it seems that a lot of people struggle with this kind of setup, okay? So the first thing you need to do is you need to figure out the angle that you're pressing at, because some people just will arbitrarily put the bench at 45, some people arbitrarily put it at 30 or 15 or whatever. Start with the goal and then work backwards from there. So my goal today is to kind of do some kind of like mid-incline press, right? So if we're calling this decline, if we're calling this flat, right? Again, arbitrarily flat, okay? Because relative joint positions are the king here. And we'll say this is the most incline. I'm gonna do something that's like in between that. You know, so for me, if you took this camera right now and you tilted it sort of backwards, it would be an angle that's like just above horizontal. So that's where I kind of want to land with this thing. So I'm going to take a best guess and I'm going to say, let's just put it there. One tick up. It's probably like 10 degrees, 15 degrees or something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine where are my shoulders, okay? Probably like right here. And I'm going to lay down and I'm going to be like, okay, how does this bar interact with me? It feels like it's slightly too high. So what I'm going to do, and by high, I mean it's just closer to my neck. So I'm going to scoot back a little bit. And voila. So that was fairly lucky because I haven't set this kind of thing up in a little while. But the point is just take a best guess, reassess, and along the way, make sure that you're staying in line with what you envision the goal to be. So again, I set my arm path first, and then because I've done this a good amount of times, I just took a best guess of like, okay, that's kind of where my hand was gonna end up with the bar. Easy peasy. Now, this may take a lot more little shimmies and stuff like that. So I would say some general guidelines and some rules that you can follow is when you get this bench in here and you're going through the testing stuff, you want to kind of start from the bottom up. Okay, so what I mean is I started with the empty bar right up there, but best case scenario, you start with the bar down here, right? And the beauty of the Smith machine is that you can actually move the bar all the way down to set your grip. And so what I would do is I would, pull to a position that's comfortable. For me, it's probably arms in line with the body. And then basically just get to a point where forearm is around 90 degrees from the bar, okay? If your arms are this way, it's gonna be basically you're doing a weird tricep press. And if your arms are outside of that, that's gonna also not feel comfortable for a number of different reasons, most of which are crummy elbow and forearm related. Okay, so find the 90-degree position, put your hands there as your grip, unrack from that point, and then we're good to go from there. Now, the specific kind of press I'm gonna be doing today is very much a pec dominant press, okay? So what that means is that I'm gonna stay, mostly in that sort of bottom, we'll call it 60%, right? I'm not gonna go and do this part of the motion, right? Because from here up is mostly like a triceps thing, okay? So if you wanted to do a full press, chest and triceps, do the full range. But if you wanna just annihilate your freaking pecs and your delts, just kind of groove in this bottom end of the range. You're going to maintain a lot of load from this thing. And also what you're going to realize is you're going to keep tension on your pecs and you're not going to have so much tricep involvement because we're doing triceps separately. I'm very much a divide and conquer kind of person rather than just like, hey, let's blend it all into one thing. So that's generally how I set this up. An additional point that I would say is aside from starting in the bottom, a really, really big key here is to make sure that you're setting up in your active range of motion. So what that means is not only that you're setting the joints in the positions that you want for the muscles that you're trying to train. So for me, this goal is really middle and upper pec specific. So I'm going to kind of squeeze in between those points and then see where my arms land. And then I'm just going to kind of reverse action, right? You wouldn't pull up here and then randomly go there, right? You would, in the same way that if you were sort of aligning a press this way, you would naturally pull your arms back this way. You wouldn't just randomly pull them up here and back here. So start from the squeeze, reverse action, get under, and be like, oh, where does that reverse action end be, right? And from this point, again, because I'm really thinking middle upper pec, I'm not gonna worry too much about getting my arm super far behind my body, you think about upper pec mainly and front delt mainly, they don't translate the shoulder girdle, meaning they don't protract and retract the shoulder girdle. If you've never heard those terms before, it basically just means the upper pec and the front delt, they don't move the clavicle and they don't move the scapula. They just move the upper arm to the clavicle. But the middle pec plays a big role in retraction, protraction, as well as moving the arm. So if your goals are more upper pec related, the sort of shorthand of that is you don't have to worry too much about getting all the way back into retraction because your upper pec is not a protractor. And although it will stretch a little bit more with your arm slightly farther behind your body, the difference is probably negligible in terms of the mechanical advantage stuff. So again, once you set up in this position and you kind of got all those things down, forearm angle, active range, bench angle relative to that. Oh, and then last thing is just to make sure, that your elbow stays pretty much under the bar, right? You don't want your elbow super in front of the bar. You don't want your elbow behind the bar. And when I say under the bar, I don't really mean the bar. I really mean the resistance direction. So if you look at this Smith machine from the side, it's actually slightly angled. So if the angle is kind of going like this, say this is the angle, you want your elbow to be under that angle. So with this machine, and I'll film a set from the side, but your elbow should actually be moving sort of slightly forward and backward, not just straight up and down. If the Smith is angled straight up and down, then your elbow should basically be moving perpendicular to the floor, straight up and down as well. So we'll just get some warm-ups in here and see how it goes. So how to properly warm up. Step 1, make sure your setup is appropriate for your structure. Step 2, put some load on the bar. I just put 25s on either side. Fairly light for me. And then what you're gonna do from there is you're just gonna do some reps. And the cool part about this is that when you do some reps with the lightweight, you can just take the lightweight off and then you can add slightly more weight and then you can do that weight. And that's pretty much the warm-up, right? The purpose of a warm-up is not to mentally masturbate your way around doing 10 different exercises that have nothing to do with the actual exercise you're doing, right? It's just to perform the motion, perfect the skill, make sure you're actually concentrating on the skill, and slowly add load until you're working weight. That's how I go about it. Now, the question of should you touch your chest, I think is really missing the point. That should be sort of a secondary, tertiary thing that you think about after what you've done is set this up properly and measured the active range stuff, right? Because you don't really have to ask that question if you have it answered otherwise. Meaning, you don't have to ask, should I touch my chest, if you know what range you're already using. And if you aren't thinking about the range that you're using, well, then that's the problem. That's a problem to begin with. So identify the range based on the goal. If you don't have a goal, you need to set up a goal. And then you move forward from there. So this is my third warm-up, and it'll probably be my last warm-up. Oh, another thing too, make sure you got your safeties on. Another beautiful part of the Smith is to make sure that you're practicing safe sets. So that'll probably be, we'll see how this is. See if my hands are gonna hit it. Okay, so that's not too high. So the unfortunate thing here is my perfect settings are where the safeties are kind of in between being too high and too low. So what I'll probably do is actually stick something between the safety and where it normally is. So I'm about to do the first working set here, but I went over to the other side of the gym and got one of these things. I don't know if you can see that. It's one of those weight supporter things. And I'm gonna put that right there. Is that the smartest or the safest? Oops, probably not. But if I want to fail properly, I think it's worth it. So we probably only need that on one side, so wish me luck. So, I don't really think I need this. It's also kind of making me a little nervous because I can just rack it here, fail like a normal human. So set number 2 here, figured I'd show this angle. So it'll be set 2 of 3 sets of failure, move on, next exercise, which will be a little bit more middle, lower pec dominant. Figured I'd show this angle too, so you can kind of see motion of the arms and how, in terms of cueing, all you really need to think about when you're using this sort of partial range thing, if your forearms are in the right spot, you're really just thinking about this sort of small vertical window, right? Because this bone is going to be sort of arcing upward, and then it's going to be arcing inward. You don't really need to think about the inward portion, right? This bone here specifically goes up, 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 and then it goes in, 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 in. You don't need to think about the inward portion because not locking. So just think about sort of moving in the vertical portion of this arc for this particular variation. I also think for those of you who are struggling with setup, that starting this exercise in this low position from where you'll most likely have the most trouble stabilizing, controlling it is actually a good idea, good hack.